Speak, you, son of a cleaning lady, what could you possibly know besides a mop? The words cracked through the golden ballroom of Dubai's Grand Sapphire Hotel like a whip. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, marble floors shone beneath polished shoes, and 100 elite investors froze mid-bite as Sheikh Karim Al Fahad's laughter boomed across the hall. He leaned back in his silk-lined chair, eyes glinting with cruelty, his voice dripping with disdain. Around him, several guests chuckled uneasily, their champagne glasses trembling with complicit amusement. At the edge of the room, balancing a silver tray of mint tea, Jamal Williams flushed crimson. 21 years old, son of a black cleaning lady who scrubbed these very floors. He stood silently, his eyes lowered but his spine unbent. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The weight of the insult already hung heavy in the air. Karim smirked wider, sensing blood. He raised his voice deliberately so the entire ballroom could hear, "Tell me, boy, how many words can you say? In English? 2? 3? The guests laughed harder this time, some nervously, some cruelly, eager not to anger the millionaire whose money commanded respect. Phones began to lift discreetly, screens glowing in the dim light. A whispered chorus spread from table to table. He should stay in his place. Embarrassing. Why doesn't he just walk away? Jamal remained still, hands steady on the tray. Behind his calm eyes, something flickered. Dignity, quiet, and dangerous, like a storm gathering behind closed doors. Karim leaned forward now, voice sharp with mockery. "Well, cat got your tongue? Or did your mother never teach you to speak properly while she was scrubbing floors?" Laughter erupted again, crueler this time, filling the hall. But not everyone was laughing. A Brazilian businesswoman narrowed her eyes, her fork frozen midair. A German tech magnate leaned closer, whispering, "This is going too far." Even among the powerful, some recognized arrogance when it bared its teeth. Still, Karim basked in the sound of his own cruelty. He motioned dismissively toward Jamal with a jeweled hand. "Sit down before you embarrass yourself further. These are matters of culture and business, far beyond a servant's mind." Silence stretched. The air thickened. Jamal's lips parted ever so slightly as if weighing a choice. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. "Son, they'll see. Your uniform, not your mind, but let your words be your sword." The hall waited. Some smirked, ready for his defeat. Others held their breath, sensing something was about to shift. And then, the narrator's voice cut in, slicing through the tension like a blade. They laughed, certain the son of a maid had nothing to offer. But in moments the boy they mocked would speak, not 1, not 2, but 9 languages. And the laughter would die in stunned silence. Jamal Williams' life had never been framed by crystal chandeliers or polished marble floors. His childhood world smelled of bleach and soap, of the faint citrus cleaner that clung to his mother's uniform when she returned home from endless shifts at the Grand Sapphire Hotel. Angela Williams, his mother, had raised him alone. She scrubbed luxury she could never afford, polished glasses she would never drink from, and folded sheets she would never sleep in. She worked from dawn to dusk, and though her hands were calloused and her back ached, her dignity never faltered. Every night she carried home one gift her son could not buy anywhere: wisdom. "Son," she told him, "they'll see your uniform, not your mind, but let your words be your sword." That sentence became the drumbeat of his life. While other children his age wasted hours chasing games and noise, Jamal disappeared into the quiet refuge of books. At 15, he found an old French grammar guide tossed in a donation bin. He devoured it, scribbling vocabulary in the margins of his notebooks. Within weeks, he could hold conversations with tourists at the hotel lobby where his mother worked. French opened a door. Then Spanish opened another. Mandarin followed. He discovered Portuguese and Italian through community tutors, German and Russian from online videos, and finally, Arabic, which he picked up from his mother's co-workers in the hotel kitchens. Each new language was a key to a wider world. By 16, Jamal could greet strangers in 5 tongues. By 18, he debated with international students online in flawless grammar. By 21, he could switch between 9 languages with confidence: English, Arabic, French, Spanish, Mandarin, German, Portuguese, Italian, and Russian. But Jamal never showed off. He carried his brilliance quietly, as if it were a blade too sharp to reveal carelessly. He worked nights serving tea and days studying linguistics at a modest university abroad, the first in his family to do so. Every page he read, every phrase he mastered, was a tribute to the sacrifices his mother made. His dream was simple, yet vast: to become a diplomat, to sit at the tables of nations and prove that intelligence could come from anywhere, even from the son of a woman who scrubbed hotel floors. But inside the glittering world of billionaires and magnates, Jamal was invisible. To the guests of the Grand Sapphire Hotel, he was nothing more than another servant with a tray. They saw his uniform, not his mind. They nodded for drinks, never for conversation. And then there was Sheikh Karim Al-Fahad. Karim was not merely wealthy. He was arrogant enough to believe his money made him a god among men. Born into a fortune, he had never scrubbed a dish, carried a tray, or spoken to someone outside his circle as an equal. Power, to him, was the art of making others feel small. He enjoyed mocking the staff at public events, turning their discomfort into spectacles for the amusement of his peers. For Karim, belittling people was a sport. For Jamal, surviving humiliation was survival. The two worlds collided on the night of the International Business Summit. Karim's insults cut through the glittering ballroom with the ease of a knife. "Speak? You? Son of a cleaning lady? What could you possibly know besides a mop?" His laughter echoed against the marble walls, drawing smirks and chuckles from the tables. Jamal stood by silently, balancing his tray of mint tea. His face flushed, but his eyes remained steady. Years of carrying his mother's wisdom kept him rooted. Karim sneered again, baiting him. "Tell me, boy, how many words can you say in English? 2? 3? The crowd chuckled, some with cruelty, some with nerves. Phones lifted discreetly, capturing the moment. A whisper floated through the air. He should stay in his place. But Jamal's silence was not a weakness. It was thunder waiting for the right strike. Because while they saw only a servant, Jamal knew who he truly was. He remembered nights of studying by candlelight when the electricity was cut. He remembered practicing Mandarin with vendors in Chinatown, correcting translations on his phone while sweeping the lobby. He remembered the mantra that guided every humiliation: dignity doesn't shout, it waits, and then it roars. The investors in the hall didn't know this. To them, he was only the son of a maid. But soon, they would discover the truth. For arrogance has a loud voice, but dignity, when it finally speaks, shakes the walls. The ballroom of the Grand Sapphire Hotel glittered like a crown under its chandeliers. Waiters in pressed uniforms slipped between tables, pouring wine and laying dishes with careful precision. But all eyes seemed to follow just one figure: Sheikh Karim Al-Fahad, his laughter booming, his gestures grand, his cruelty sharp, and tonight his chosen target was Jamal Williams. Jamal stood with his tray at the side of the room, shoulders squared, eyes calm but lowered. He had been in this position before, mocked, dismissed, underestimated. He had learned the art of swallowing pride because pride didn't pay bills, and defiance didn't erase hunger. Yet there was something different in the air tonight. Karim's voice carried farther, his insults harsher, his arrogance practically begging for a fall. "Waiter!" Karim barked suddenly, slapping the table for effect. Crystal glasses trembled. Jamal stepped forward, his expression polite, mask firmly in place. Karim leaned back, smirk curling at the edge of his mouth. "You speak languages, do you? Then translate this for us." He rattled off a rapid string of nonsense syllables, mixing fragments of French with distorted Spanish and gibberish. The guests erupted in laughter, delighted at the absurdity of the game. Jamal's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. He had been punished before for overstepping when he corrected a guest. He knew the price of speaking in the wrong room. His mother's voice whispered in his mind, "Dignity doesn't shout, son. It waits. Then it roars." Karim raised, his eyebrows spreading his hands theatrically. "See? Not even a word. He's as blank as the plates he carries." Laughter followed again, but this time it wasn't universal. A few guests shifted in their seats. A Brazilian businesswoman, Helena Duarte, tapped her spoon gently against her wine glass but said nothing, her sharp eyes fixed on Jamal. Across the table, German tech magnate Matthias Weber adjusted his glasses, leaning forward as if watching a test he knew might take a sudden turn. Karim wasn't done. He switched tongues, slipping into Arabic, confident the servant in front of him would not follow. His words dripped with venom, though he smiled as if making a toast. "His mother scrubs my floors," Karim said smoothly, drawing chuckles from his companions. "And he scrubs my plates. That's all he'll ever know. A servant's son remains a servant's son." The cruelty was clear even to those who didn't speak the language. His tone, his smirk, the amused ripple of laughter among the Arab magnates seated closest. Everything spelled humiliation. Jamal heard every word. His pulse quickened, but his breathing stayed measured. He had trained himself to listen, to understand before responding. He could have answered then and there, turned Karim's own words back on him, but something in him said wait. Timing was everything. From another table, a French investor frowned, glancing between Jamal's steady face and Karim's mocking grin. "Careful, Karim," he murmured to no one in particular, though the words carried in the hushed lull that followed the laughter. "Sometimes the quiet ones surprise you," but Karim ignored it. He always did. Power, in his mind, was a shield against consequence. He leaned closer to Jamal, lowering his voice to a cruel whisper designed to cut deeper. "Tell me, boy," he said in English this time, his accent thick, his tone sharp, "do you even know where you are? This is Dubai. This is wealth. This is power. You don't belong in this room except to carry plates. And the moment you forget that, you'll be reminded, like your mother is reminded every time she picks up a mop." Gasps flickered around the table. Some guests lowered their eyes, unwilling to witness the humiliation. Others chuckled nervously, afraid to seem disloyal to Karim. A few, Duarte, Weber, and a handful of foreign investors, watched Jamal as if sensing something beneath his stillness. Because his silence wasn't the silence of defeat. It was the silence of calculation. Jamal's mind turned over Karim's words in Arabic, French, English. He could answer in all three, could expose the man with a single phrase. But his mother's voice anchored him. "Your words are your sword. Use them when they will cut the deepest." And so Jamal stood, shoulders straight, tray balanced in one hand, face calm. He didn't bow. He didn't break. Karim laughed again, mistaking silence for surrender. He slapped the table once more, the sound echoing in the ballroom. "See? Not a single word. Not even a defense. And this," he declared loudly for all to hear, "is why bloodlines matter. You can dress a servant's son in a suit, put him in school, but he will never be more than this. Quiet, invisible, nothing." A hush spread across the room, heavy and uneasy. Helena Duarte leaned to Weber and whispered, "He's waiting." Weber's eyes gleamed behind his glasses. "Yes," he replied, "and when he speaks, it will not be small." The laughter died down slowly, the crowd sensing tension even if they couldn't name it. Karim poured himself another drink, smug, in his victory. But Jamal's silence, heavy as stone, was no longer a weakness. It was a storm gathering, each insult another rumble of thunder, and soon the room would discover that the boy they mocked wasn't voiceless at all. He had 9 swords at his disposal, 9 languages sharpened by years of struggle, and when he finally chose to speak, it would not just cut Karim down, it would silence the entire hall. The Grand Sapphire Hotel's ballroom shimmered like a jewel. Crystal chandeliers poured gold across marble floors, violins floated softly above the chatter of the world's elite. Waiters moved gracefully through, The tables with trays of wine, unseen, unnoticed, but the air had gone heavy. It centered on one young man in a crisp server's jacket, tray in hand, shoulders squared. Jamal Williams. Across from him sat Sheikh Karim Al-Fahad, a millionaire as loud as his wealth, his laughter booming, his cruelty sharper than glass. Karim leaned back in his velvet chair, grinning like a lion circling prey. "Go on, boy," he sneered, his voice carrying like a trumpet through the hall. "Say something smart, if you even can." A ripple of laughter followed. Some chuckled. Nervously, others too eager to please the sheikh laughed harder. Phones lifted to capture the spectacle, ready to immortalize humiliation. Jamal stood motionless, eyes lowered, pulse steady. But then, for the first time that night, he shifted. He placed his tray carefully on the nearest table, straightened, and lifted his chin. The room stilled, sensing something shift in the current. His voice, when it came, was calm but deep, each syllable cutting through the air like a blade. "Which language would you like, sir?" he asked evenly. He let the pause stretch, then added, each word deliberate. "Arabic, French, Spanish, German, Mandarin, Italian, Russian, Portuguese, or English." The silence was instant, absolute. Gasps broke out. A fork clattered. Somewhere in the back, a glass slipped and shattered. No one looked down. Every gaze locked onto the young man, who had just defied the script. Karim blinked, his smirk faltering for the first time. "Parlor tricks," he scoffed, though his voice was thinner. "Anyone can memorize a list." To crush the moment, he switched tongues, firing rapid Arabic, his words sharp, cruel. "Do not pretend before me. A servant's son cannot even pray correctly, let alone speak the tongue of kings." His allies chuckled, but Jamal inhaled slowly, steady, and then, in flawless Arabic, elegant, fluid, reverent, he answered, "Respect, Sheikh Karim, is greater than wealth. The Prophet himself said, 'The most honored among you in the sight of God is the most righteous.'" A shock ran through the Arab investors. They exchanged glances. A few murmured in astonishment. Karim's face tightened. "French," he barked suddenly, desperate to prove the boy a fraud. Jamal didn't blink. His voice flowed, smooth, Parisian-accented French. "En France, on dit que la valeur d'un homme se mesure par son respect, pas par sa fortune. In France, they say the worth of a man is measured by his respect, not by his fortune." A woman from Paris gasped, then clapped softly. Others joined. Karim's jaw clenched. "German, then." Jamad's reply rolled out in precise, confident German. "Ehre ist kein Geschenk des Geldes. Sie gehört dem, der Menschen mit Würde behandelt. Honor is not a gift of money. It belongs to the one who treats people with dignity." Matthias Weber, the German magnate, smiled broadly. "Flawless," he whispered, nodding approvingly. Karim's skin glistened with sweat. He snapped again. "Mandarin." Jamal's lips curled faintly. In soft, melodic Mandarin, he quoted Confucius. "Jun zi, he butong, xiaoren tong buhu." The noble man seeks harmony, not uniformity. The petty man seeks uniformity, not harmony. The Chinese investors gasped, exchanging awed glances. The weight of the words struck harder than any performance. "Italian," someone called. "Il rispetto," Jamal replied instantly, rolling the syllables with ease. "È la danza più bella che l'uomo possa offrire al mondo." Respect is the most beautiful dance man can offer the world. Portuguese followed. Spanish. Russian. Each language landed like a hammer, each phrase building on the last, each truth undeniable. Jamal's confidence grew with every word. The ballroom, once filled with nervous laughter, now echoed with applause that rose, wave after wave, swelling with admiration. Karim sat frozen, his face dark, his lips pressed thin. He had been stripped bare. His game turned against him. The servant he mocked had become the center of the gala. And then came the moment that ended it all. Jamal lifted his hand slightly, and the applause hushed. His eyes locked onto Karim's, calm, steady, unflinching. His voice, this time in English so all could understand, cut like a knife. "Earlier," he said, each word deliberate, "you told this room in Arabic that my mother scrubs your floors and I scrub your plates. That is all we will ever know." A collective gasp surged through the ballroom. Some guests turned to Karim in disbelief, horror etched across their faces. Jamal's tone hardened, not loud, but firm enough to silence the hall completely. "But you are wrong. My mother taught me dignity, and tonight I showed you hers speaks louder than your arrogance." The silence that followed was heavier than thunder, and then applause. Roaring, relentless, undeniable. Investors rose to their feet, clapping, cheering. Helena Duarte's hands stung from the force of her applause, her eyes fierce with admiration. Weber rose as well, nodding, beaming with, approval. Even those who had laughed moments before clapped now, swept away by the undeniable truth of the scene. Karim's hands gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles whitened. His lips parted, but no sound emerged. He had been undone. Not by shouting, not by violence, but by calm, irrefutable brilliance. Jamal bowed his head slightly, and with a final line that would live far beyond that golden ballroom, he declared, "Language is not owned by money. It is owned by those who respect it, and those who respect people." The hall erupted. Phones caught every second. Flashes, like lightning, immortalizing the night the son of a cleaning lady silenced a millionaire. Karim lowered his gaze. He had mocked a servant. Instead, he had crowned a king, and in that moment, the power of money, arrogance, and cruelty collapsed beneath something stronger: dignity. The applause rolled on like thunder, rattling chandeliers, echoing against the marble walls of the grand sapphire ballroom. Jamal stood still in the center of it all, his posture straight, his tray forgotten, his face calm. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't begged, hadn't shouted. He had simply spoken, and the entire room had shifted on its axis. Around him, investors who had moments ago chuckled at his humiliation now murmured with awe. Helena Duarte, the Brazilian business magnate, leaned across her table toward Matthias Weber. "A fool in silk," she said, her Portuguese accent sharp, "is still a fool." Weber nodded, eyes fixed on Karim. And tonight, the richest fool in this room just exposed himself. Karim sat rigid, staring into his untouched glass of wine. The smirk that had carried him for decades was gone, replaced by the tight, pale face of a man stripped of his armor. The investors who had once orbited him like satellites now turned their chairs away. Some whispered openly, others avoided his eyes altogether. But the message was clear. His power had evaporated with Jamal's words. And then, the moment that would change Jamal's life forever. Helena Duarte rose from her seat. The room quieted, watching her. She walked directly to Jamal, her heels clicking on the marble like a drum roll. She stopped before him, her eyes warm but fierce. "Your mind," she said, her voice carrying, "belongs in boardrooms, not break rooms." The ballroom erupted in fresh applause, louder, more deliberate. Helena reached into her clutch, drew out a card, and pressed it into Jamal's hand. "I run a global investment firm. I will personally sponsor your education, a scholarship, a full ride, and when you're ready, an internship at my company. The world needs leaders like you, not just waiters." Jamal blinked, stunned. For the first time that night, emotion threatened to crack his calm. He bowed his head slightly, his voice low but steady. "Thank you, ma'am." From the back of the hall, where staff usually stayed unseen, a figure shifted forward. Angela Williams, Jamal's mother, had paused her shift when she heard the commotion. She had been standing quietly by the service doors, her apron still dusted with soap, her eyes wide. She had seen it all, every insult, every word, every triumph. Now, as the applause swelled for her son, her hands lifted to her face. Tears spilled freely, her shoulders shaking. She whispered almost to herself, "They finally heard you, my boy." Jamal saw her, and his breath caught. For a heartbeat, the ballroom, the investors, the chandeliers, all of it vanished. There, was only his mother, who had scrubbed floors so he could stand here tonight. He wanted to run to her, to hold her, but he held his ground, dignity wrapping around him like a cloak. Karim shifted uncomfortably in his chair, trying to regain his footing. "It was just a joke," he muttered, his voice brittle. "A harmless joke." But the room turned colder than stone. Investors shook their heads. One man from Qatar leaned to his associate and whispered, "A man who hides cruelty behind jokes is unworthy of trust." Another guest added, louder this time, "Respect is the first currency of business, and tonight Karim showed he is bankrupt." Within minutes, guests began drifting from his table. Those who had come to court him now fled his orbit entirely. Even his closest allies wouldn't meet his eyes. His empire, still intact on paper, had fractured in spirit. By the time the night ended, Karim al-Fahad had become a man people avoided, not admired. But Jamal, the son of a cleaning lady, had become the center of the story. Phones had captured it all. The arrogance, the insults, the flawless replies, in 9 languages. Clips began spreading before the gala even ended. By the time the last flute of champagne was poured, the video was already circling the globe. Waiter speaks 9 languages. Humiliates millionaire at gala. Sheikh's mockery backfires as servant's son silences the room. Karim's empire shook under the weight of public scorn, but Jamal's star only rose. Later that night, in the quiet of a small hotel room, Jamal sat with his phone in hand. He called the one person he needed to speak to most. When Angela answered, her voice trembled with the residue of tears. "Mom," Jamal said softly, his voice breaking for the first time that day. "They finally saw me tonight." Her reply came gently, firmly, the way only a mother could speak. "No, son. They didn't just see you. They finally heard you." Jamal closed his eyes, clutching the phone to his ear, and for the first time in years, he let the tears fall. Not of shame, but of triumph. The servant's son had spoken, and the world was listening. The gala ended, but its echo did not. By the time dawn lit the Dubai skyline, Jamal Williams' name was trending worldwide. Clips of him standing tall in his server's jacket, calmly listing 9 languages as the sheikh's smirk collapsed, had spread across every social platform. The hashtags multiplied. "You languages of respect." "You son of a dream." 9 tongues, 1 truth. Millions watched in awe as the son of a cleaning lady dismantled arrogance with dignity. The world could not stop replaying the moment where silence broke into thunder. Within weeks, offers poured in. Universities extended scholarships. Media outlets begged for interviews. But Jamal turned most down, his focus sharper than fame. He accepted a fellowship in linguistics, then moved into work as a cultural consultant, bridging gaps between corporations, governments, and communities. 2 years later, the United Nations announced its newest and youngest simultaneous translator, Jamal Williams. He stood in New York's Grand Assembly Chamber, headphones on, effortlessly weaving between tongues while presidents and prime ministers leaned on his words. But Jamal did not stop there. Remembering his own struggle, he launched the Words Without Walls initiative, a free program teaching languages to disadvantaged youth. Community centers in Detroit, Lagos, São Paulo, and beyond echoed with his students' voices. His belief was simple. Every child deserves the keys to every door. Language is one of them. Thousands of young people, children of bus drivers, maids, and factory workers, sat straighter because Jamal had proven that brilliance can bloom anywhere. Sheikh Karim al-Fahad was less fortunate. His downfall came as swiftly as his mockery. The viral clip had not only humiliated him, but had poisoned his reputation in boardrooms. Investors whispered that if he could not respect people, he could not be trusted with partnerships. Within months, deals evaporated. Business partners pulled out. Newspapers branded him the arrogant sheikh who mocked the wrong man. His wealth remained, but wealth without respect was an empty shell. Once courted for his power, Karim became a cautionary tale told in hushed tones at conferences. Never let arrogance blind you, or you'll end like him. The man who once owned rooms with his laughter now entered them to silence. He had mocked a servant's son, and in doing so, had destroyed his own standing. The Grand Sapphire Hotel, embarrassed by the scandal under its roof, took swift action. Its management launched the Hidden Talents Initiative, an internal program designed to uncover the overlooked skills of its staff. Within a year, chambermaids were enrolled in college, bellboys were promoted into training programs, and servers were sponsored to pursue higher education. The hotel that had once silenced its workers now celebrated them, and at its entrance, a framed photograph of Jamal hung discreetly near the lobby, a reminder that respect is the most valuable service of all. Meanwhile, the internet kept Jamal's moment alive. His calm, unwavering voice in 9 languages became a global symbol. Youth across continents mimicked his words on TikTok and Instagram. Teachers played the video in classrooms as proof of perseverance. One caption under the clip read, "They mocked his uniform. They forgot he carried a library inside." Another went viral. "Money can build hotels, but dignity builds empires." The hashtag #WangLanguages of respect remained active for months, a rallying cry against arrogance, a celebration of brilliance hidden in plain sight. And through it all, Jamal remained grounded. Whenever asked about that night, he simply smiled and repeated his mother's mantra, "Respect yourself in silence." One day, the world will hear you loud. They laughed when a millionaire mocked the son of a cleaning lady. They smirked at his uniform, at his silence, convinced his place was to serve and never to speak. But the laughter died when the boy lifted his head and spoke in 9 tongues, not loudly, not angrily, but with the calm precision of someone who had carried dignity his whole life. In that moment, arrogance crumbled, and a room that thought it owned the world learned that respect is the only universal language. True power is knowledge, the kind that cannot be stripped away by money or status. True wealth is humility, the grace to see others not by their uniforms but by their worth, and true downfall is arrogance unmasked, the kind that destroys its own empire the moment it mocks another's dignity. Jamal's story reminds us that brilliance lives everywhere, often hidden in plain sight, waiting for the moment to roar. If this story inspired you, subscribe for more powerful stories of Black excellence, justice, and dignity that silence arrogance.